Welcome back to Daily English Dialogues, our dedicated YouTube channel for language learners around the globe who are striving to elevate their communication skills to the next level. If you are tuning in for the first time, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell so you never miss an episode designed to refine your vocabulary and fluency. Today, we are diving into a subject that is often considered taboo in many cultures, yet remains absolutely essential to our everyday lives. We are going to be talking about money, financial habits, and the complexities of discussing salaries.
Thanks for having me back on the show. You are entirely right. Financial matters can be incredibly sensitive to navigate. People often feel extremely uncomfortable when the topic of income arises, whether they are talking to close friends, family members, or colleagues at work. Today, we want to break down those barriers and look at the language we use to discuss our financial situations, how we manage our budgets, and how we handle those awkward moments when someone asks, "So, how much do you actually make?"
Exactly. Our main goal today is to provide our upper intermediate listeners with advanced vocabulary and sophisticated expressions to handle these conversations naturally. While money might seem like a simple concept, the vocabulary surrounding it can be quite nuanced. We will explore terms related to earning, spending, saving, and negotiating. We want to ensure that by the end of this episode, you feel completely confident participating in any conversation regarding personal finance.
I think it's important to note that our attitudes toward money are shaped by so many different factors: our upbringing, our culture, and our personal career goals. Some people are naturally very frugal, meaning they are incredibly careful with their spending, while others might be more extravagant or spendthrift, living from paycheck to paycheck. We will look at all these different archetypes today and analyze the specific phrases that define them.
That's an excellent starting point. Before we jump into the main dialogue, let's set the stage. Imagine two friends who have known each other for years, catching up at a local coffee shop. They are both at a point in their careers where they are reevaluating their professional worth and their financial trajectories. This setting allows for an honest, open, yet sophisticated discussion about their economic realities.
I love that setup. It mirrors real life perfectly. Often, it is with our closest confidants that we begin to unpack these heavy topics. We can ask the tough questions and share our anxieties about inflation, cost of living, and whether our compensation packages truly reflect our contributions at work. Let's begin our dialogue and see how these two friends navigate the intricate world of financial discourse.
You know, I was reading an article the other day that argued transparency in salaries could completely revolutionize the modern workplace. It claimed that if everyone knew what their peers were earning, it would eliminate pay disparities and force companies to be entirely fair. But honestly, I still find the idea of disclosing my exact income to my colleagues incredibly daunting.
I can totally sympathize with that perspective. There's a deeply ingrained cultural norm that equates your financial status with your personal worth. If you reveal that you earn significantly more than a peer, it can foster resentment and jealousy. Conversely, if you discover you earn less, it can be incredibly demoralizing and make you feel undervalued. It feels like a double-edged sword.
It really is. Last week, a colleague of mine directly asked me about my monthly salary during lunch. I was completely caught off guard. I didn't want to be rude and dismiss the question entirely, but I also felt that my financial compensation is a private matter between me and the Human Resources Department. I ended up giving a very vague answer, mentioning a general range rather than a specific figure.
That is usually the safest strategy to employ in a professional setting. You can use phrases like, "I earn within the standard industry average for this position," or "My compensation is competitive and aligns with my experience." This allows you to maintain your boundaries without appearing defensive or secretive. Did your colleague press for more specific details after you gave that response?
Fortunately, no. They understood the subtle hint and shifted the conversation to the rising cost of utilities and rent instead. It made me realize, though, that we lack the conversational tools to discuss these matters elegantly. We either overshare and create awkwardness, or we shut down completely, which prevents open dialogue about fair wages.
That is precisely why this conversation is so vital. There is a distinct difference between gossiping about salaries and having a constructive discussion about compensation structures. For instance, when you are preparing for a performance review, knowing the market rate for your skill set is crucial. Without that information, you are essentially flying blind during negotiations.
That's true. If you don't know what the industry standard is, you might end up accepting an offer that is well below your actual value. In economic terms, we call this information asymmetry, where one party has more information than the other.
Companies rely on this to keep labor costs down, while employees suffer because they don't know their own leverage.
Exactly. So while it might feel uncomfortable to talk about money with friends or colleagues, doing thorough research on platforms that aggregate salary data can give you the objective insights you need. It removes the emotional vulnerability from the equation and transforms the topic into a matter of market value and professional economics.
Let's shift our focus slightly from earning money to how we actually manage it. Over the past couple of years, I've noticed a massive surge in my daily expenses. Inflation has truly diminished my purchasing power. Items that used to be affordable now consume a significant portion of my disposable income. I've had to completely overhaul my budgeting philosophy.
I am right there with you. The cost of living crisis has forced almost everyone to reevaluate their financial priorities. I used to be quite laissez-faire about my minor daily purchases, things like buying a premium coffee every morning or ordering takeout multiple times a week. But those micro expenses accumulate rapidly over the course of a month, creating a massive dent in your savings.
They certainly do. I started tracking every single expenditure using a dedicated financial application. It was an eye-opening experience. I discovered that I was allocating an astronomical amount of money towards subscription services that I rarely even use. Canceling those unnecessary streams allowed me to reallocate those funds directly into my high-yield savings account.
That is a classic example of financial mindfulness. Many financial advisors recommend the 50-30-20 rule as a foundational framework for budgeting. This system suggests allocating 50% of your income to essential needs like housing and groceries, 30% to personal wants and lifestyle choices, and reserving the remaining 20% strictly for savings or debt repayment.
I've tried implementing that exact framework, but given the current skyrocketing prices of real estate and rent, my essential needs often spill over into the 60% range. This means I have to be incredibly disciplined with my discretionary spending. I've had to sacrifice a lot of leisure activities, like dining at upscale restaurants or traveling during peak seasons, just to ensure my savings goals aren't compromised.
It requires a tremendous amount of resilience to maintain that level of discipline, especially when we are constantly bombarded with advertising encouraging us to consume more. There is a psychological phenomenon known as lifestyle creep, where as your income increases, your standard of living rises proportionally. Before you know it, you are earning twice as much as before, but you still aren't saving anything because your expenses have expanded to match your new salary.
Lifestyle creep is incredibly insidious. You justify a premium car purchase or a more luxurious apartment because you feel you've earned it through hard work. While that might be true, it locks you into a cycle of financial dependency where you can never afford to take a career break or transition into a lower-paying, more fulfilling role because your fixed overhead costs are simply too high.
That is why true financial freedom isn't necessarily about accumulating vast amounts of wealth. It's about minimizing your financial obligations so that you have choices. When you have a substantial emergency fund, ideally covering 6 months of living expenses, you gain a sense of peace that no expensive luxury item can ever provide. It gives you the confidence to walk away from a toxic work environment or pursue an entrepreneurial venture.
Speaking of professional choices, I wanted to discuss the art of salary negotiation. I have an annual performance review coming up next month, and I am determined to advocate for a substantial raise. In the past, I always accepted whatever percentage management offered because I feared that pushing for more would make me look greedy or ungrateful.
That is a very common apprehension, particularly among professionals who value workplace harmony. However, you must remember that a performance review is a commercial negotiation, not a personal favor. Your employer is purchasing your skills, time, and expertise. If the market value of those assets has increased, it is entirely reasonable to request a corresponding adjustment in your compensation.
I understand that intellectually, but the actual execution of the conversation fills me with anxiety. How do I initiate the topic without sounding confrontational? I want to convey that I am fully committed to the company's long-term vision, but I also need to ensure that my financial requirements are being met in a sustainable way.
The key to a successful negotiation is objective preparation. You must build a compelling case based on tangible metrics and achievements rather than emotional pleas. Don't base your argument on the fact that your rent has increased. Instead, focus on how your projects have directly boosted company revenue, optimized internal efficiency, or expanded the client base.
So effectively, I need to demonstrate a clear return on investment for the company. I should quantify my achievements. For example, instead of saying, I managed the marketing campaign well, I should say I spearheaded a digital marketing initiative that increased lead generation by 35% over 2 quarters.
Precisely. Numbers are indisputable. When you present concrete data, it shifts the tone of the meeting from a subjective request to an objective business discussion. Furthermore, you should always research the salary distribution for your specific role within your geographic region. If you can show that your current salary is in the lower quartile despite your high performance, management will realize they risk losing you to a competitor.
What happens if they acknowledge my contributions but claim that budget constraints prevent them from offering a financial raise at this time? That seems to be a very common corporate counterargument, especially in volatile economic climates. How do I pivot in that scenario without reaching a complete standstill?
That is where non-monetary benefits come into play. Compensation is a comprehensive package, not just a base salary number. If cash is limited, you can negotiate for alternative forms of value, such as additional paid time off, flexible remote working arrangements, company-sponsored professional development courses, or equity options. Sometimes these perks can significantly enhance your quality of life even more than a modest cash raise.
That makes a lot of sense. If I manage to secure this raise, my immediate plan is to invest the surplus capital rather than spending it. I must admit, though, the world of investing feels incredibly overwhelming. There are so many complex financial instruments: stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate, and cryptocurrencies. I find it difficult to determine which avenue aligns best with my risk tolerance.
It is completely natural to feel overwhelmed by the sheer volume of choices. The financial sector often uses convoluted jargon that discourages ordinary individuals from taking control of their portfolios. For upper intermediate learners, mastering terms like diversification, asset allocation, and compounding interest is essential to understanding the basic principles of wealth accumulation.
I am familiar with the concept of diversification. It essentially means not putting all your eggs in one basket, right? By spreading your investments across different sectors and asset classes, you minimize the impact if one particular market experiences a severe downturn.
Exactly. Diversification is your primary shield against market volatility. For long-term wealth building, many financial experts advocate for low-cost index funds or exchange-traded funds, commonly known as ETFs. These funds automatically track a broad market index, such as the S&P 500, giving you instant exposure to hundreds of successful companies with minimal management fees.
That sounds like a much more pragmatic approach than trying to pick individual stocks, which often feels akin to gambling unless you possess insider knowledge or spend hours analyzing corporate balance sheets. But what about the concept of compounding interest that you mentioned earlier? Why is it considered so revolutionary for long-term savings?
Compounding interest is often described as the eighth wonder of the world because of its exponential power over time. When you invest money, it generates returns. Instead of withdrawing those returns, you reinvest them. Consequently, in the following year, you earn returns on both your initial principal and the accumulated interest. Over a span of 20 or 30 years, this cycle creates a snowball effect that can drastically amplify your initial investment.
The real challenge, then, is time and patience. Our modern society is so accustomed to instant gratification that waiting decades for an investment portfolio to mature requires an immense amount of psychological fortitude. People often panic during market corrections when they see the nominal value of their portfolio drop, leading them to liquidate their assets at a significant loss.
That is the ultimate pitfall for novice investors. They let emotion dictate their financial decisions. Successful investing requires a systematic approach, such as dollar-cost averaging, where you invest a fixed amount of money at regular intervals, regardless of whether the market is up or down. This removes the temptation to time the market, which is a notoriously unreliable strategy even for professional Wall Street traders.
It's fascinating how our approach to these investment strategies often depends heavily on our age and generational background. I've noticed a massive disparity between how my parents view financial security and how our generation approaches it. My parents' generation prioritized absolute stability, finding a secure job with a pension, purchasing a home as early as possible, and avoiding debt at all costs.
Absolutely. The generational divide regarding financial philosophy is profound. The baby boomer generation entered an economy characterized by robust manufacturing, affordable housing markets, and stable corporate structures that rewarded loyalty with long-term security. For them, debt was viewed as a personal failure or a significant risk to be mitigated as quickly as possible.
Whereas today, the socioeconomic landscape is completely different. Many millennials and members of Gen Z entered the workforce during global recessions, facing astronomical student loan debt and a housing market where property values are completely disconnected from average wages.
For many young professionals, buying a house feels like an unattainable dream, leading to a shift toward what some call doom spending money on immediate experiences rather than saving for a future that feels uncertain.
Doom spending is a compelling term that perfectly encapsulates the disillusionment many young people feel. If you believe that home ownership or a comfortable retirement is completely out of reach, regardless of how hard you save, it becomes rationalized to spend your income on travel, premium dining, and luxury items that bring immediate joy. It's a coping mechanism for systemic economic anxiety.
It's a complex situation. On one hand, you want to enjoy your youth and live in the present moment because tomorrow is never guaranteed. On the other hand, neglecting long-term financial planning entirely can leave you incredibly vulnerable later in life. We need to find a sustainable equilibrium between enjoying our resources today and safeguarding our future well-being.
Finding that equilibrium is the ultimate financial challenge. It involves redefining what success looks like for our generation. Perhaps success isn't about owning a massive suburban home or climbing a rigid corporate ladder. Maybe it's about achieving temporal freedom, the ability to control your own time through freelance work, remote employment, or building independent income streams that protect you from corporate layoffs.
That resonates deeply with me. The concept of the gig economy and side hustles has allowed individuals to diversify their income streams so they aren't entirely dependent on a single employer. It grants a level of autonomy that previous generations never experienced, even if it comes at the expense of traditional job security and corporate benefits.
It truly highlights that money is not just a medium of exchange. It is a direct reflection of our cultural values, societal challenges, and personal aspirations. As the global economy continues to evolve with automation and artificial intelligence, our linguistic tools and financial strategies must adapt accordingly to ensure we remain resilient and prosperous.
We cannot have a comprehensive discussion about financial management without addressing the elephant in the room: debt. In modern society, credit cards and personal loans are readily available, making it incredibly easy to consume goods before we have actually earned the capital to pay for them. Debt can be a powerful tool, but it can also become a devastating trap.
You are absolutely right. It is crucial to distinguish between what economists classify as good debt versus bad debt. Bad debt typically involves borrowing money to purchase depreciating assets or lifestyle luxuries that offer no financial return, such as using a credit card to fund an expensive vacation or buying high-end fashion items that you cannot afford to pay off at the end of the month.
And the interest rates on standard credit cards are notoriously predatory. If you only pay the minimum balance every month, the compounding interest works entirely against you, trapping you in a perpetual cycle of debt replication where you are paying vastly more than the original cost of the item. It's a form of modern financial servitude.
Conversely, good debt is viewed as an investment in your future financial capacity. This includes mortgages for real estate that is likely to appreciate over time, or student loans that allow you to acquire highly specialized skills that significantly boost your long-term earning potential. In these instances, borrowing money allows you to leverage your future income to build current wealth.
Even so, the psychological burden of carrying any form of debt can be incredibly taxing. It creates a baseline level of stress and anxiety that affects your health, relationships, and professional choices. When you owe significant sums of money, you are far less likely to take career risks or pursue creative passions because you cannot afford a single month without a steady income stream.
That psychological weight is often underestimated. There are two primary schools of thought when it comes to debt elimination strategies. The first is the debt snowball method, popularized by various financial personalities, which focuses on paying off your smallest debts first to build psychological momentum and a sense of accomplishment, regardless of the interest rates.
And the alternative strategy is the debt avalanche method, correct? This approach is mathematically superior because it prioritizes paying off the debts with the highest interest rates first, thereby minimizing the total amount of money paid over time. While it makes perfect sense logically, it requires a lot more patience because it might take a long time to completely eliminate the first major high-interest debt.
Exactly. It perfectly demonstrates that personal finance is more about behavioral psychology than it is about mathematics. You have to choose the system that aligns best with your personal temperament. The most elegant financial plan is completely useless if you lack the emotional consistency and discipline required to execute it over an extended period.
As we begin to wrap up this extensive conversation, I want to touch upon an aspect of money that often gets overlooked in capitalistic discussions: philanthropy and the ethics of wealth. Once an individual manages to secure their financial stability, escape debt, and build a reliable portfolio, what is the moral responsibility regarding the surplus?
That is a profound philosophical question to contemplate. Wealth allows for a high degree of personal comfort, but true fulfillment often comes from contribution and philanthropy. There is a growing movement known as effective altruism, where individuals apply scientific evidence and rational analysis to determine how they can benefit others most effectively through their financial donations.
I find that approach deeply inspiring. It ensures that your charitable contributions are maximizing their positive impact on global issues, like poverty alleviation, healthcare access, and education equality. It transforms money from a simple tool of personal consumption into a potent instrument for systemic global improvement and positive social change.
It really brings our entire conversation full circle. Money is ultimately an amplifier. If you're an anxious person, having more money might simply amplify your anxieties about losing it. But if you possess a clear set of values, financial abundance can amplify your capacity to do good, support your community, and live a life defined by freedom, generosity, and purpose.
That is a beautiful note to conclude on. We hope this comprehensive dialogue has provided our upper intermediate audience on Daily English Dialogues with a wealth of sophisticated vocabulary, idioms, and conceptual frameworks to articulate their own financial philosophies clearly and elegantly in English. Remember, discussing money doesn't have to be awkward if you approach it with objectivity, respect, and economic intelligence.
Thank you all for listening to this episode. Be sure to drop a comment below sharing your own budgeting philosophies or your experiences with salary negotiations. We absolutely love reading your insights and engaging with our vibrant community of global learners. Until next time, keep practicing, keep refining your skills, and take control of both your language journey and your financial future.